here are the challenges, I think. Number one, parenting is exhausting, right? Like when I think of that sleep issue, you know what I really want to say? Who told you they were going to sleep through the night?
Exactly.
Like, what advice was given to you to think that they were actually going to do this? Because I don't know about you, but when I went into parenting, like I was totally ready for sleepless nights. It wasn't that I was going to like it or that I wanted it. I just knew it was par for the course, right? So no, I don't have insomnia. My baby does. Technology is changing how we parent. I do set limits. For example, he wasn't allowed to use the tablet computer until after he had downloaded a potty training app. But you know what? I'm using my kids. This little guy is nearly 3 years old and still in a diaper. Right? And I'm thinking, what is that about? And it was, we've given up. We're just too tired to deal with this. Okay? Well, that's not going to get to them. It's not always clear who we should ask advice, who we should ask for advice. Mom, when you need parenting help, do you call grandma for tech support? Right? And from birth to adolescence, what we know is that every year is critical. So even if kids have had these challenges early on, the one thing I don't want people leaving today with is feeling like, oh, you know, we've got a regulation issue at 8 or 9, that's it, game over. You know, you can never stop hoping and trying because that's what they need. They need that reparative relationship. So some styles of parenting, well, the permissive parent where there's a lack of rules and structure. Critical times are often chaotic, like getting out of the house in the morning. There are few consequences for action, allowing the child a great deal of choice or freedom beyond what the child can manage. Child gets whatever he or she wants, and when the parent is frustrated with the child, the parent actually reverts to a very strict form of discipline. So they go very quickly from being totally permissive to it is either going to be my way or no way. The authoritarian parent, an absolute set of standards enforced to control the children. Rules are very rigid. There is no room for any kind of discussion. Obedience, respect for authority, punctuality, order and control are all emphasized. Verbal give and take is actually discouraged. Love is conditional. I'll love you more if you listen to me. And humiliation, threats, bribes, and harsh punishment is used to instill in obedience. Now, I'm going to just pause here for a second, because I think part of what happens with this particular method as well, we can encounter cultural issues, right? Like I would say my husband would tend to be more of the authoritarian parent. Like I can remember when he actually tried to put our 2-year-old for a timeout, and it was like, are you completely crazy? What are you thinking? And my husband is a pediatric dentist, right? So think about that. He's very used to working with children, but he is totally in control, right? Like they're in his chair, in his office, and he's wielding the tools. Right? What kid isn't going to listen to that, right? But that was the cultural issue for us. I grew up here. I was raised in a home where we talked things through. For him, it was, you know, misbehavior was the sign of disrespect, right? So for some of these conversations, it's going to be important to think about culture and think about how culture might actually be influencing parenting style and the reaction to some of that misbehavior. And then finally, authoritative, where there's clear rules, routines, and expectations, but independence and individuality is still encouraged. Child and parent rights and needs are respected. Open communication. Love is unconditional, and children are taught how to think and problem solve. You know, I think about the child and parent rights and needs are respected. I mean, one of the things I'm working with my daughter now is you just don't get to make your problem mine. Like, really, I'm here to help you, but it's not my problem in the way that she would like it to be my problem. And, you know, love is unconditional. I think about the times when my kids maybe did get into trouble at school or whatever, and for them to know that they need to feel safe coming home. Even if they've done something really wrong, they have to know that they can come home and that home is always going to be there and will help them to get through it. So, children of authoritarian parents were more likely to be discontented, submissive, whiny, distrustful, withdrawn, and often aggressive. Children of permissive parents were more likely to be immature and lacking in self-reliance and self-control. And children of authoritative parents were more likely to be self-confident, self-controlled and assertive, and more likely to obtain higher grades. So parenting style really does matter. It does make a difference, right? So this is the positive discipline book that you had referred to.
Basically, as we developed our campaign, we asked a lot of key informants, 18 key informants, to direct us if we're telling parents not to put their kids in timeout or not to spank their child, what should we be doing? And we did a literature review on that, and basically the comments that were all coming back were from this recommendations, the joint statement on, joint statement on physical punishment of children and youth. It was all coming back to that, and I think the next slide actually has the full list.
It does, and it's
pretty
interesting because I think when our new federal government first came into office and were asked about the spanking issue, the original comment was, well, we don't have any plans to address that. And then because of the Truth and Reconciliation report, there's now a commitment from the federal government to introduce some legislation around that, right? So in terms of best practices for child discipline, building that strong attachment, absolutely critical. And please don't think that if it hasn't happened in year one, it is not going to happen. No, you can start to build that whenever. And quite frankly, I don't think as a parent, as an aunt, as you know, a good friend to some of my good friends' children, I don't think you ever stop building that attachment. Like it isn't like immunization where I give you a dose and it's like that's it for life. You actually have to keep nurturing that relationship. Foster a positive parent-child relationship through love, nurturing, and respect. Have realistic expectations and gain an understanding of their child's developmental stage and capabilities, and respond to challenges in a manner that suits their child. Model desired behavior and encourage or praise children when they are behaving well. Be consistent with the chosen approach to discipline. Set reasonable limits. Create a safe environment for kids. And take care of themselves as well, so they're able to respond to challenging behavior in a calm and effective manner. Sorry, just before we get into that, I was really struck. I had the chance to hear Andrew Maltzoff speak in December. He's the guy who was the first one who did the photographs where, you know, he opens his mouth and the baby opens his mouth. And, you know, the message from his talk was the name of the campaign. Children see, children learn. Mm-hmm. And he actually had this really neat video clip. And it was of a kid who was maybe, I don't know, between 2.5 and 3. So she's sitting, you know, let's say with Louise on this side of the table, and there's another person sitting over here. And Louise reaches for something. And the person over here says, "What are you doing? Stop that, don't do that." Okay, and that's all. And then about 3 or 4 days later, they bring this little girl into pretty much the same situation, right? And the same objects are on the table. And guess what happens? The little girl looks at the object, but doesn't touch it. Because what she's seeing is that touching it gets whoever in trouble with the person across the table. And so she has learned not to touch it. And it was a very young child. So this notion of children are actually going to base their working model on whatever they experience is proven, and we see it right from infancy. So, you know, sometimes when Louise and I were doing this was the white elephant in the room. Some of you are from public health, right? Lots of you are from public health. And I think that's, I'm going to be really honest, I think that's where we're probably getting the most pushback, which I'm having trouble understanding around the timeout issue. So let's just talk it out. So to be clear, what we're talking about timeout, it is that isolation of a child. Okay? Time in is very different, right? We're talking about, you know, Louise has misbehaved, I'm done, and now she's going to go sit in the corner. Even though I'm in the same room, that is time out. It is still, I'm shaming her, I'm humiliating her, maybe I'm even doing this in front of her peers, or in front of her siblings at home, right, or a company that's come over. But the idea is she has to go sit in a corner or whatever and figure out why I am so upset and so angry. Kids under 5 have great difficulty doing this without somebody being there for them. So timeout really should be a last resort. And I firmly believe that the only exception to using timeout is when there is a protection issue. I am losing control. I can tell I'm losing control. It's really in my child's best interest that I step away from this situation and that I put my child in a safe place. Right? That's when I think it's actually quite legitimate to use that approach. It's best to understand why the child is behaving the way he is. It may be age appropriate. Joey not being able to sit at the dining table on a chair that was, quite frankly, a little too big for him. He had also just eaten, okay, and I won't talk about the fact that he had pancakes for dinner, but he had eaten it, you know, watching television, because that's what he does. He wasn't interested in dinner. His tummy was full, so why was he being made to sit at the dining table with us, right? Young children don't always have the capacity to understand the implications of their actions on themselves or on others. You know, that's what Roots of Empathy has really been working on, right? Is to build that capacity to empathize. But young children, they're not born with it. You know, again, it's like resilience. It develops over time, and it really is based on what they see. That's what they learn. Young children need to learn to self-regulate, and parents can help them do that if they stay calm and discuss the situation instead of losing it. There's, you know, nothing more challenging if a child is dysregulated and the parent enters the situation, and now the parent's also dysregulated, and now they are in fact dysregulated together. That's a pretty tough one to recover from, like in terms of in the moment. Children who are punished may develop the reaction of not getting caught the next time, right? Oh yeah, I gotta figure out a way to get around this. If children are punished by their parents for their mistakes, they may not go to their parents when they are in trouble. This goes against all we know about attachment theory, right? Like even at 20, I want my kids to know if they've made a mistake. I want them to come and tell me. Let me be of some help. Difficult situations with young children are a great way to help them problem solve, and parents can do that much better with a conversation than by isolating a child. So, connecting the science now, brain development, what is it that we're programming into the child's brain? Serve and return, children learn what to expect from their parents. Toxic stress, prolonged periods of crying, being ignored, that is toxic stress. It doesn't have to be some big, you know, explosive, traumatic event. It can be lying in a soiled diaper every day for 3 hours can lead to toxic stress. Okay, so neglect even leads to toxic stress. And many have in fact adapted this to time in. They are not the same thing. It's very different when I say to Louise, Louise, let's go sit over here quietly together. I'm going to stay here with you, and I want to help I want to try and understand what happened. Right? And maybe Louise is not ready to talk to me, but I'm still going to stay close by. And I want to keep reminding her that when she's ready, I am here to help her, okay? Very different from timeout. It helps the child to calm down. It tells the child that when overwhelmed, the caregiver is there to support them. And it reflects what we know about early brain development and regulation. And just to be clear about this thing called timeout, apparently some daycare centers are now just calling it something different. It is what it is. I don't really care what you call it. They're calling it a time for reflection or something. Seriously? And I have to say, this should never be used in daycares. It should never. So if you're working with childcares, you really want to be getting that message out to them. Timeout is not, it's not even, quite frankly, it shouldn't even be a last resort. Okay, it's just an inappropriate practice in an early learning and care setting. And it really doesn't matter what you call it, right? For parents, though, again, in that, when we're into that protective mode, yeah, it may be where parents go. Okay, any questions about that? Any concerns? Anybody feeling uncomfortable? Yes?
Maybe this is a little bit different from that, but could you comment a little bit on parents using like an iPad or a tablet to kind of distract their child? For
Yeah.
example, like I work in a community health center. I was doing an immunization for a 4-month-old baby yesterday. And after the immunization, the parent took out his smartphone and gave it to the 4-month-old baby, held the tablet to distract them from, like, distracting away from the pain from the immunization. So I said, well, why don't, could you maybe pick up the baby and hug her? Like, for me, I guess that's common sense, but it's not to a lot of parents.
Yeah.
I think it's, I guess it's more like educating them that don't do that. Like, a 4-month-old doesn't need to see a tablet.
Oh my God.
Right? So, like, sometimes it's just, I think parents are just overwhelmed. And so, like, I just kind of have to support them and let them know that it's
When
other strategies.
Yeah, when I was in the U.S. and I heard Andrew Meltzoff and Patricia Kuhn, who's a big name in language and early language development. So a lot of those, if you've ever seen those graphs about word vocabulary, like the words heard and then the words that kids have, a lot of that comes from Patricia Kuhn. And I actually asked her very specifically to give me a firm answer on any kind of screen time. And what she said very clearly to me is screen time is not good for young children, period. So I guess I could live with it if like what I'm hearing is parent wasn't even holding this baby. Yeah, that's a big concern. So I think, they're part of our life. We can't ignore them. And, when I say play with Jack and my nephew pulls out his iPad, it drives me crazy. So this definitely does not help our situation, especially with things like executive functioning skills, right?
What do you have to say about, let's say, a caregiver who says that I use timeouts because I don't have the time the time to do a time in. So if it's a daycare worker, maybe they're running circle and the child's being disrupted in circle, so they use the timeout. Maybe the child's just sitting off to the side, but they can't participate on circle until they're able to, until they're behaving appropriately for circle. Or the parent who's in the middle of something else and they can't be there to be with that child at that time.
So I've run 2 daycares, so bad example to give because it's just inappropriate. And the one thing in a child care center is that it is not just you, right? It isn't just one staff. There's other staff that you can call in. There's usually a supervisor. In my centers, I was on program in one half time and off program half time, the other one I was off program all the time. I was the backup, right? The other thing I want you to think about, because you may be having these conversations with daycare centers, right, is I want you to think about how you would feel walking into that classroom and seeing your kid sitting over here while everybody else is sitting in circle time. And, to me, that is like, it's that walk of shame, right? It's everybody knows that Joey's over here because he couldn't manage. And according to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which I went back and read again when we were starting this work, We're not supposed to be humiliating and shaming our kids. But that's what time out does. Like, don't kid yourself. Time out is a convenient strategy for us. It has nothing to do with what is good for kids. What is good for kids is us being there and having the time to talk to them and to work things through and to have those conversations. And maybe for that busy parent, you can't have it right then and there, but you want to come back to it. Right? Like, I can tell you with my daughter, in the heat of the moment, that's not the time to have the conversation with her. I have to wait till she calms down and then go back and say, you know, do you think maybe we could have done that a little differently? Right? So I think there are other strategies. I think it's just very hard for parents. And that's what Children See, Children Learn does, is it gives, when you watch the videos actually give parents other strategies to help deal with that behavior.
I just want to say two things to your comment. Actually, I don't know if you're from Ontario, Toronto, or anywhere outside of this province, but technically speaking, you're not even supposed to force the children into circle time. So you're supposed to have another staff member kind of have an overview of other open-ended activities, which I just found out myself too. So something to look into. And then a comment to your rewards. Before I got into the early childhood field, before I had my own children, I used to do the whole sticker chart thing after doing a lot of research and frontline, first-hand experience. I've realized that the effectiveness or the efficacy behind rewards actually backfires, because what ends up happening is you're depleting their internal reward system. And so they expect something every single time.
Every single time. So their ability to be internally motivated actually starts to go down. And they depend on external motivators to do the right thing. You know, it's the same to me as when, you know, and we will all have different perspectives on this, but like my kids were expected to tidy up and to help with cleaning up around the house. And, you know, I have somebody who comes into my house, like she's the second wife in my house, and she helps me keep things organized. But I would always say to my kids, you got to tidy up your room, because Donna's not coming here to clean up your mess. She's really coming here to just help us keep things clean. But that's not about tidying up your mess in your room, right? And they weren't rewarded for it. They didn't get an allowance because they kept the room tidy. You know, and my kids have grown up knowing when they need money to go and get something, they just come and ask me. And I'm either going to say yes, or I'm going to say, gee, you know, it's not really possible right now, and have that conversation with them. And whoever told parents that parenting didn't take time, who is that person? Right? Because parenting takes time. I had the conversation a year ago with my nephew's wife, because I was even a year and a half ago really concerned about the baby's language, and she was very resistant, very reluctant to hear it. The next morning she woke up and she actually said to me, she said, you know, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. Parenting is the hardest thing I've ever done. I get exhausted watching them struggle. It's very, very hard for me. I see them trying, but you know, it's just between working full time and juggling those schedules and getting the car serviced and the groceries done and the housekeeping done. Their lives are incredibly demanding and busy. You know, so it is hard work. Anything else before we, yep?
I was just going to say, in terms of the parent who's too busy in that moment, the timeout isn't the only option.
No, it's not.
Because if you have a child who's throwing blocks across the room or hitting their brother with something, you can say, it looks like you're having a hard time with this activity. Come and do this instead. Like, you don't have to even spend a lot of time talking about you if you don't have the time. You have to cook because something's burning. It's not about, like, punishing them for throwing blocks. It's about, no more blocks, this is dangerous.
Yeah.
How about
Good
some coloring?
point.
Like, how about some...
And redirection is one of probably the most frequent strategy in the video clips that you'll see.
And I think a lot of times people think it's like rewarding them because you're not taking everything away and they're not secluded with nothing to do and learning their lesson. It's just like, you know, if you're going to eat the Play-Doh, I'm going to put the lid on it and I'm going to get you some whatever else as an option, and they'll play with that for 15 minutes before they try and eat it. So that it's like, but it doesn't have to be like ultimate punishment.
Absolutely.
It just has to be like, look at this.
Sorry, at the back, is there a question? Yes.
My name is Chaya. Speaking on behalf of the Early Learning and Care program,
Sorry, on what program?
Early learning and care program.
Oh, okay.
Going by daycare.
Yeah.
Speaking of our childcare in particularly, there is no time off permitted whatsoever. There's no makeup name for it.
Yay!
But it will be very interesting to see how this information is getting translated to Ministry of Ed. We are in a very high-risk community.
Okay.
A lot of our children, let's say, we license for 24, 18 out 24.
Yeah.
You can see that.
This is a challenge.
Yes.
Okay.
So 1-to-8 ratio, it could be something that is something that we have been working on and has been working on this for so many years.
Yeah.
It is a challenge. We not meeting especially criteria, but our children, like I say, 18 out 24 need someone to work with them alongside.
Wow.
So,
Right, and thanks for bringing that up. And I should add that the Best Start Resource Center is now developing a frequently asked question document on timeouts for service providers. And we're just in the last review process. We've engaged a few key people in the field to help us come up with evidence around that, like why is timeout not appropriate, what else can be done, what can be done when you have a larger group, and different options so that at least service providers are clear about it, and it ideally will go to the next step and have a document for parents. But you're right, we did not engage Ministry of Education on that, I have to say, but that's a really good point to bring up. Thank you.
Okay, we're like down to the last like 6 minutes, so we got to rush through. So we talked briefly about rewards and the science. You know, what is it that you're programming, which is exactly what you were talking about, and children learn to expect it all the time. What about ignoring a child's behavior? And you know, should I get a cappuccino or a latte? You know what the science tells us about that? Well, again, what are you programming? Your needs are not important to me. So children learn what to expect from their parent, and again, are we activating that stress response system? Now, we had put some case studies together. I don't know if we have time
I don't think
for
we have
those.
time for case studies, but I would encourage you to take those handouts that are on the table, and I do have a few more, maybe at your agency.
Yeah,
discuss
you
those
could do those,
or
yeah.
think them through and see what could be done with those.
Yeah, and there is
we do have a
one-
few more copies.
There's one specifically that is childcare in that. So you know, if you're working with childcare programs or early learning and care programs, that's a good one to have a conversation about as well. Are there any other questions
But
that,
we're not quite done. We're
Yeah.
not quite done.
before we, yeah.
So, yeah.
For me, any other questions? Because I'm actually going to hand it over to Louise at this point.
So,
Okay.
and I need to leave Robin a second here to move the camera.
Okay.
I just want to talk a little bit about the campaign. Hopefully you have heard about this. I know Chaya referred to it a few times, so we have created a website, Children See, Children Learn, which has 8 videos on it. As you can see in the main area, there are, for parents of children 1-year-old, what does this positive discipline look like? 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and then 4 or 5-year-old. We also interviewed the parents to normalize the challenges and help provide some more strategies. So on the left-hand side, you can see there we have interviews with parents that may help support, you know, the other parents. There are some tips and links to other websites, and we also have a feedback form. We encourage parents to provide us some feedback, and there is a gift certificate. We prefer if service providers don't answer the feedback form, but encourage the parents to do so. We will be asking service providers this in a couple of weeks. We're just waiting till all the promotion is done and asking service providers about the campaign. And at the bottom, you can see there's a take the pledge. We encourage parents to take a pledge to parent without punishing. And if they do choose to do that, then they can download a screensaver, and we ask them, would you like to be reminded of that in 3 months' time? And then 3 months later, we send them another survey, so we find out, was this effective? Do they remember the videos? So please do encourage parents to take the pledge and provide us feedback, because there's been very little evaluation data on similar campaigns, and we would love to get some evaluation data. We did get some through, we're getting them through the feedback, we got some through focus testing, we're getting some through the 3-month feedback, so the more we have, the better. And we we did put all those videos on a DVD and created a ready-to-use workshop, so you can use that with parents. And it's about a 1 to 2 hour workshop you could do. So you could say, okay, parents of 2-year-old, we're gonna have a workshop next Tuesday, and we suggest some discussion question. You run one of the videos, and then have a little bit more discussion around it. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible for service providers to use. We have sent those to all early year centers, all CAPC, CPNP, Aboriginal Health, Head Start programs, and Public Health did receive a few copies, but in any case, you can always look at the videos online, and you can download the facilitator guide, and we do sell this for $15. So we've made it as accessible as possible. We also have a growth chart that were distributed through daycares, because parents told us that they really listen to their child educator and teacher. So we've distributed those through daycares, early year centers, CAPC, CPNP programs, and a few to public health. So, and there are some key messages, and then we direct parents to the website that way too. We've made some mini posters. Again, there was a wide distribution in the fall, and you can order some more to post in your center as a reminder. And we've got a public service announcement and a few different tools. And so that childrenseechildrenlearn.ca is our main website, which, by the way, is all available in French also. 8 different videos, 8 different different families that we filmed and different interactions. And you can find our resources on our website, on the Best Start website, under services, campaigns. Then you can download a lot of these materials, including public service announcement, which would go very well on a Facebook page, or we've got graphics. You can download easily from that. So that pretty much concludes what we had for today. I really thank you. Everybody stayed very attentive, and Chaya is such a great presenter. I really want to thank Chaya for being here. Thank you very much.